All right, welcome CBGR agents, commercial agents, or agents that are interested in engaging in commercial. Actually, this goes for both commercial and residential, I think, right, Phil?
Absolutely.
Yeah, but he's going to dive into a lot of it that has to do with commercial as well. But we have a great speaker today, a great expert in 1031 exchanges. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Phil Atwan with Exchange Resources, Inc. Phil, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ruben. Thank you. And good morning. Happy New Year, everybody. It's my first time with you in 2024. I think we're going to get more in 24 than we did in 23, but it's going to depend on what you and I do. Let's face it, it's just not going to come to you. It's not going to knock on your door. You have to go to it. That's going to be the success of 2024. Remember, you and I cannot control the market. We cannot control the size of the pie. The pie gets big, the pie shrinks. It goes everything from those big Costco, big apple pies they have, or pumpkin pies or whatever. But then sometimes the market shrinks like those little pot pies, you know what I'm saying? And it can go anything in between. You and I can't control that, but we can control our size of the slice. And our goal is to open up our slice a little bit bigger every day by doing the same things over and over that go for success. If we do nothing, we will get nothing. If we plant seeds of relationships with people who are in a position who own property, especially rental properties, well, the likelihood of you doing business goes way up because now they're getting to see you, know you, you're talking about the things that matter most to them. And what's going to happen is your business will begin to change if you keep planting seeds. If you don't plant seeds, you will harvest nothing except weeds. Did you ever notice that? Vacant land, sides of hills, you plant nothing, you get weeds automatically. Weeds are guaranteed to grow automatically if you do nothing. But if you are committed to your business, you will see your life change. You will grow people, relationships with people that maybe you know a little bit or don't know at all, but you've been spending time. And how do you find the people who own the rental properties? It doesn't matter if it's commercial or residential or industrial. What matters is you get a list from your title person of those people who've owned those rental properties for 12 years or longer, even 10 years or longer. What's inside of properties that are 10 years or long held by the same person, or 12 years, as a rental or a business use property? The answer is equity. There's equity in those buildings, and that equity, the longer it stays there, the more it goes to sleep. It doesn't produce as much. And what we want to talk about today is how do you actually talk with these people in 2024? How do you impact to create new, not selling people, but educating people on the things that matter most to them? That's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to go as far as we can. Today is part one. Did you know that? We're going to have part two in February at the end of the month. And that's going to be on February the 28th. Same time, 10 o'clock, but we're going to go into the more advanced information of 1031 exchanges. The advanced part that I just haven't had time to speak with you about. And that's going to be at the end of February, February 28th. So you might want to put that down into your book. But today, we're going to be talking about the basics and then some. Okay? So we'll be together for an hour and a half until 11:30, or maybe a few minutes before. And then we'll see you again next time for part two. One more thing I want to say before I begin. You see in red on the lower left-hand side of your screen, it's my phone number. Did you know that if you have a client who asks a question that you need help with on a 1031 exchange, you call me. I will talk to your client. I will speak with them and help them and answer their questions, or send them to a tax professional that they might need to talk with. I want to help you, and I want to help you with the marketing letters that we've created. And those will be available to you if you see my email address on the bottom in green, philatwan@gmail.com. All you have to do is send me an email requesting the 20 letters I have on different aspects of their investment properties and the things that matter most to them. And check this out. I will help you. When they have questions, they start calling you back. Again, I can help you speak with your clients and answer their questions, or my staff can do that. They're all trained very, very well. So the bottom line is we're not going to leave you alone. We're not going to leave you to do this by yourself. You got to have other people in different areas who are experts who can help you get new listings, answer their questions, and ultimately it'll turn to a sale and a purchase, probably in a 1031 exchange. So if you send me the email, I'll be happy to get you those letters, but you got to make me a promise that you will use those letters. It's important because if you don't use them, they're not going to do you any good. It's like me giving you a bag of seed and you have a fertile area, but you don't put the seed in the ground. You don't water it. Then you'll get nothing. It's just the way it works. All right, Ruben, I don't know if I've been too strong with the agents at this point, but
Nope.
You know what? You're not going to get anything if you don't plan anything. This is based about meeting people, creating new relationships. Am I right or wrong?
Phil, you knocked it right on the nail, so we have to be straight and forward with them, honest, and they need to know that we can open that door for them, but they have to walk right through it.
Absolutely. So let's get going. First thing, you and I are not in the tax business because you have to have a license in the state of California to do that. It's like I don't have a real estate license, and I purposely don't because I never want to be seen competing with real estate agent. I never even want to give that hint. So the bottom line is that we want to make sure you don't give tax advice, just like I don't do anything like that. And we want to make sure we don't give legal advice because you and I are not a member of the bar in California because you have to be a member of that to be able to practice law. So we're not going to do either one of those. But today we're going to give you ways that involve the law, that involve the tax code to help your clients create more money for themselves in these business use properties, commercial, industrial, and yes, residential, even as small as a condo. And the bottom line is you'll be amazed as to what you can do. What's the most important thing? There's 3 items. The number one thing in purpose of wanting to put your hard-earned money into property that you're not going to live in, that you're going to rent out or use in a business, is monthly income. Monthly income. There's so many people with money out there who want to buy a rental property, but they don't know how to do it. They don't know what the difference is between residential and commercial. They just know that if I buy units or if I buy, rental property, I make money. And you know what happens over time? The rent goes up. The lease goes up. It doesn't go down. They have these built-in increases. And the motivation is twofold. It's primarily monthly income to an investor. I own investment property, my wife and I. So many of you that you're watching me today, you're hearing my voice. You own investment property. And let me tell you something. I've been in this industry, both in title and the last 26 years in 1031 exchanges. And I can tell you something. The most successful, wealthiest agents are not necessarily the ones who sell the most. It's the ones who own the most rental properties because they get monthly income from a lot of different buildings. And some of the buildings have multiple units. It could be a condo, it's 1 unit, 1 door. Single family, 1 unit, 1 door. Duplex, 2 doors, 1 property. Fourplex, 4 doors, 1 property. I think you get it. So the bottom line is the more doors you have paying you rent, the more likely you are to see your bank account go up and your ability to reinvest to make more income. Now, income is divided into 2 sections. cash flow on the left, rate of return that's on the right. The smart ones have already bought the properties and they've watched the values go up. We'll get to that in a minute, but they've watched their rents go up as well. It's amazing. But what they don't know is this item called rate of return. That is so very important. Why? Because that's going to determine in time your cash flow going up, your income going up. We're going to talk about that again this morning. This is very important. Now, this is the part I'm going to go a little slow on because I want you to get this. This is so important to people who own rental properties, commercial, industrial, or residential. The second most important thing is over time, values go up. I get phone calls from all over the country every single day, from Florida to Texas to New York, Hawaii, Washington, Oregon, people in the middle of the country. They wanting to do 1031 exchanges. So many kind people like you refer my name to them. And guess what happens? They call me up and they say, I'm so excited. I'm in escrow. I'm selling a property for, $1 million, but I paid $300,000 for it. I just can't believe how fast and high the value went. They're so excited. They don't want to pay the taxes and they want to do a 1031 exchange. And you know what I say to them? Well, congratulations. I'm glad you called and I'm glad this happened with you. I said, but you know what? Don't you wish that you had bought a second property or a third property or a fourth property? You'd be sitting on a lot more equity, wouldn't you? And they say, absolutely. Some people just refinance their properties, take some equity out, the rentals, and buy more. Either way, it's going to work. But the bottom line is they need you to educate them of the options they have. So appreciation over time is very important to an investor. Now, listen, you might have noticed today's a little chilly out the back. I'm wearing a sweater and a shirt, and I have to go out for a meeting right after I'm finished with you, and I'll have a jacket on. Seasons change, temperature changes. I hear we're getting rain later this week. That's a good thing, but it's gloomy. But that will change to spring. And then come March, April, May, all the buds will be coming out, the flowers will be coming out, the fruit will begin to grow on the trees because the season is changing. And then you go into summer. Summer is wonderful. It's warm, sometimes too hot. But the bottom line is you can go to places, vacations, to the beach, other places, Europe, wherever you want to go. And the bottom line is that you get to travel and you get to enjoy the weather. And then all of a sudden come October, November, the gloom cools off, the leaves start falling off the trees, and then December comes, and here we go all over again where we are today. Folks, seasons change all the time. In real estate as well. The key is to be able to understand that even if property values stay flat, or even if they go down, they're going to go back up again. Just like the seasons change, the values will change. I've been doing this in real estate since 1982. My biggest regret is I wish I had bought more property. My wife and I feel the same way because we would be more wealthy. We would have more money to do the things that we want to do. So the bottom line is, don't worry about the market conditions. Go out and make the relationships because in time, over time, the values will be more than what you pay for them today, or what you paid for them 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, or 20 years ago. You got to show this to these clients that over time, the values will go up. And we're going to talk about that equity in those buildings as they go up. Number 3, the third most important thing to an investor is they need tax write-offs. Do you know what the people in Washington and the people in Sacramento here for California, do you know what they want to do? They want to raise taxes all the time. Do you ever say, well, we're going to cut taxes? You rarely ever hear that. It's more of they want to raise taxes. Why? Because they want to spend more money to supposedly make everything better. Most of the time, the money they spend is wasteful. They need you and I to control the government, not these politicians who do a horrible job. So the bottom line is that they want to tax you more, especially if you make more. So if you're at this tax bracket and you start buying property and all of a sudden those properties start cranking out the income, guess what's going to happen to you over time? Not only will you make more, but the government is going to raise the percentage of what you're going to pay in taxes because they're not very good at what they do. So you have to have tax deductions. What are tax deductions? Anything, you can visit your property. I've got so many people who are buying out of state. As an example, I was speaking in an office in Beverly Hills, and the guy was telling in front of the whole group, we were talking about how they've been acquiring other properties, selling their LA properties and going other places because they have a higher cap rate. Yes, the values are less there. Yes, the rents are less there. Proportionately, the values to rents are higher there than they are here. And that's why investors have been 25 to 35% of investors have been leaving California in the last few years because, number one, they can do better other places. And number two, the government is putting a lot of heartache and burden on people who own property, giving most of the rights now to the tenants and taking them away from the landlord. I mean, look at what they did in Pasadena. It's one of the worst rent control areas in the entire state of California, as bad or worse than the city of Los Angeles. And they passed this crazy rent control thing, which was not balanced. Again, you got to have balance. You can't just go one way or the other. And they made the landlords roll back their rents for 2 years to 2 years ago rent rates. That's just the way it is, folks. You have to have tax write-off to prevent the government from taking more from your clients. And the more they own, the higher the rates go, the more they'll have to pay. So whether you're like this guy I was just telling you about, he goes to Vegas to go visit his properties. Well, he does a few other things there, right? But the bottom line is, what does he do? He deducts his transportation. He writes it off. He writes off his hotel expenses. He writes off his meals. He writes off anything that he's going to do to the properties. He writes it all off. Does he write off his gambling? No, he can't do that. Not in Vegas or any place. Government won't let you do that. But the bottom line is, I think you get my drift. It's all a tax write-off to lower the taxes you pay off the rents you collect. And that's the bottom line. Now check it out. They also have depreciation. What is depreciation? It's a tax write-off on the left side on the bottom in yellow. If it's residential, they'll let you write off your residential building on depreciation for 27 and a half years. If it's a commercial building, they let you write it off for 39 years. Now, how do they come up with that? Well, they say on a residential building, whatever you pay for it originally, your CPA will break apart the purchase price. So if you once upon a time bought it for $300,000, they're going to break your $300,000 purchase price into two values: the value of the land, the value of the building. The land value plus the building value equals your total purchase price. And they'll make you take the building value. If it's residential, they'll divide that building value by 27 and a half. That's how many years you get to have it. And whatever the answer is, that's how much depreciation your client will be able to get over the next 27.5 years. Now, the beautiful thing is, if they decide to do capital improvements, add-on, remodeling, whatever, the bottom line is is that then you can add another layer of depreciation. So you could be running a second depreciation schedule, not just on the value of the purchase price of the building, but now if you put a couple $100,000 into the property, you have another couple $100,000 that starts a second layer of depreciation. It's like a two-layer cake. The first layer cake is the cake part that is the 27.5 years on the purchase price of the value of the building. The second one is the capital improvement. So you can have multiple depreciation schedules, lower the taxes that you pay off the rents you collect. That's number one. But if it's commercial, it's the same thing. They'll let you look at the value of the land versus the land value of the building. They take the building value, but this time, because it's commercial, you divide it by 39 years, which means even though you get to take it for a longer period of time, it's going to be much thinner slices because they have to slice it up 39 ways as opposed to 27.5 ways. And the bottom line is most people are going to enjoy having residential depreciation schedules more than they would for commercial. Why? Because they're not going to hold the property probably for 30 years. You know, they're going to sell it. So you get a little more out of the residential land as far as depreciation. But let's clarify what residential is. If I have a condo, that's residential. If I have a single family rental, that's residential. If I have 4 units, 5 units and above, is that residential or is that commercial? The answer is it's residential. See, to your lender, a 5 unit, a 10 unit, a 150 unit, a 500 unit apartment building is commercial because you have to get a commercial loan, but it's not. Even though you have to pay the lender a commercial rate, an investment rate, it's still a residential depreciation schedule because it's housing. People live there. So the government says that's just the way it is. And think about the tax write-off you get just off of depreciation for those many units because it's a residential building. Folks, the whole tax code is trying to give you the benefit of tax write-offs so that you can reduce the amount of income taxes each year you will pay to the state of California and to the IRS because of your incoming rents or off of your incoming rents. These are the 3 things that matter most to an investor. Now imagine this. I want you to think about this. How many real estate agents talk about this to prospects? Very, very few. If they do, it's because they came to my class. But a lot of them don't even want to do that. They'll come to the class, they'll say, this is really good information, but they don't share it with people that they're not doing business with. That's why we provide you those marketing letters. You've got to get it in gear if you really want to be successful in this business, not by selling people, but by talking to them just like I am with you today about monthly income, appreciation, and tax write-offs. Does that make sense? Am I being too hard on you today?
Not at all.
You know, I don't mean to be hard on you. I'm telling you, if you want to be successful, you gotta do this. This is how you're going to get more business. Now, here's the big question. And this is what your clients really want to hear. And if you got the answer to the box, yellow box on the right side, you're going to get closer to making a good relationship with that owner so that you can create new listings and opportunities for them to make more money. And here's the question. How do I get my rentals to work harder for me? Because I've had these rentals for 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, 18 years, 22 years, 30 years, or more. So how do I get my rentals to be better for me, to create more income, to create more appreciation, to create additional tax write-offs? You've seen this in the past. You and I have had this discussion a couple of times in the past, but I'm going to show it to you again. Why? Because they need to see this. They being your prospects. They need to hear about this. You're not asking them for a listing. You're not selling them anything. You're showing them how to make more money. Because of the three things on the right side in green, income, cash flow versus rate of return. The one in yellow, the appreciation, and number three, the tax deductions, all are important to these people. So let's look at an example right now of what it appears as with two different properties that your client fictitiously owns or you own as a real estate agent. Number one, you have two properties. They were both they're both single families, and they're both side by side. They're next door to each other on the same street in Alhambra or San Gabriel, Pasadena, Arcadia, Temple City, wherever. You have two properties that you bought and you closed escrow in the same month of the same year, and you paid the same price, and you put down the same amount of money on these two properties. There's nothing different. They're the same floor plan, same square footage. Nothing's different except for one thing. And this is what we want to compare. A has more equity than B. You say, how can that be? Because the bottom line is, if I paid the same price and I bought them at the same time and I put down the same down payment, how can A have more equity than B? Here's the answer. You refinanced it. You took money out of B. That's why A has more equity than B and less loan, whereas B has less equity and more loan or more debt. All right? That's the only difference. Why am I telling you this? Because you are going to be talking with people if you decide to work this thing. Work, W-O-R-K. It's the big four-letter word that all of us have to do to be successful. So the bottom line is that you're going to meet with these people and show them, and I'm going to give you information that you can start sending them to show them that there's a difference when a property, A, that has more equity that they may own versus B that has less equity that they've taken maybe money out of, or they just haven't had it long enough. They have equity in there. But the question is, which one is better for me? Which one is better for them? And so let's compare. Number one, we talked about cash flow. Cash flow is very important to an investor. Do you know what a lot of investors want today? Do you know that? I can tell you what they want. They want to pay off their properties. Why? They feel better. They feel more comfortable. They feel relieved. Nobody can take anything away from them. They have no loans. So if it's vacant, sometimes it's okay. You know, that's how they feel. And there's nothing wrong with paying off your properties. Did you know that? That's what people want to do. But timing is everything. When is the best time in your life to pay off properties? Answer is when you're not working anymore. After you retire. Do I look like I'm going to retire here? You know, with my white hair and everything? I will eventually. But that's when I need my investments, and especially my properties, to create income for my wife and I. So we'll have plenty of money. So there's nothing wrong with paying off the property after you retire. It's before you retire that it doesn't make sense. I'm going to show you that in just a minute. Why do I need as much cash flow as I can get and not have any debt? Because I go to Costco and Sam's Club. We go to the market. We go shopping. We like to travel. We pay for gasoline. Everything is going up in price. Everything. You know, the government is not doing a good job with this inflation thing. So the bottom, and everybody can't wait for inflation to calm down. You need money when you retire. That's why it makes sense to pay them off, because you need the cash flow. So that's the first question. The second, so A wins the cash flow award. B has less equity. It has more debt. So you have to pay bigger payments off the rent you collect. So really, if you're looking for cash flow, A makes more sense than B. And you shouldn't go into that mode until you what? Pay off the properties. When you retire. Number two, which property of these two give you a better rate of return. And did you know, if you ask that question of the person who owns the rental property, which property gives you the best rate of return, they're not going to understand what you're talking about. They're just not going to get it. So one of my marketing letters shows you how to find that out. And I'm going to show it to you right now. So there's 5 quick questions. And I spoke with a couple of different CPAs who helped me put this together, along with a couple of good commercial agents. And one of the commercial agents does a lot of residential, like units as well. So this is how you determine what is your rate of return, or and that's what it says in the green, rate of return. So let's follow it right now. Number 1, what's the gross income that your building is paying off? It is paying in terms of rent, right? And so the number of rent you get each month for the last 12 months, now it's January, so you look back at 2023, you're going to have to tell this, by the way, on your tax return to the federal government and to the state of California. Why? Because they require to know this so they can charge you more tax. But you and I know that monthly rents times 12, even though it's your gross, it's not what you keep. So you have to do number 2. Number 2 says you have to calculate how much you pay in mortgage payments over the last 12 months. Now, if you have no debt because you paid off the property, great, you have better income or cash flow. But we're trying to find out what a rate of return is now. And that's what we're trying to come to that determination, because this is going to change everything for your investors who are not retired. So the bottom line is you take mortgage payments that you make, other insurance, property taxes, maintenance, utilities. Maybe you have to pay a CPA to do your tax returns. Maybe you have to hire an attorney to do an eviction. I mean, whatever fixing you do, whatever prep you do in between tenants to clean up the property, to paint it, clean the carpets, all that are expenses. So you take number 1, the gross income that you have in that line, then you take your annual expenses, you subtract that from your gross, and it leaves you the answer to number 3. It's your net income. That's your net. That's what you get to keep. Okay. But number 4 is the estimation of the net equity of these properties. You have to A and B. And again, you do one of these per building. So if you have a 150 unit building, it's one of these assessments over the 150 units, because it's one per building. If you have 2 buildings like this one, you do one per building. Now you're doing 2 of these. If you own 15 buildings, you do one per building. Doesn't matter if it's commercial, as long as it's being rented. The question is, what is the cash flow? What is the gross income minus the expenses? That gives you your net. Number 4, what is the net equity in the building? This is very important, because if you took the equity out of the building and you put it, let's say you want to put it in the bank, as an example, here's the question. The question is, what interest rate, Mr. Banker, a Bank of America, East West Bank, Wells Fargo, Chase, wherever you put the money, what is the interest rate you're going to give me back for my equity? Did you get that? What am I going to get back if I put it in the bank? That's essentially what you're doing now, because you looked at the gross income minus the expenses. That gives you your net. Now you're looking at the equity in the building. So you calculate that. How do you calculate equity? Well, it's what the property should sell for minus existing loan debt against the property. And we know B has more debt than A property did on the previous page. So finally, to calculate your property's approximate cash on equity return, to calculate what you're getting back from each one of these properties, you do this. You take the answer to number 3, which is your annual net income. You divide it by number 4, the estimated equity, And that tells you what your interest rate is off the equity in your building based on income and expenses and the equity that you have in the building. That's all that is. You're determining what the percentage of return is off of A versus B versus any other properties they have. And then they can now see, what am I getting back each year based on all these things? Now, which one do you think is getting a better rate of return? We've already determined the cash flow was better on A because there's very little or no debt compared to B. But the question is, which property is going to give you a better rate of return? A, with more equity and less debt or no debt, or B, with smaller amount of equity, but with more debt on the property? Which property gives you a better rate of return? Did you say property A? If you did, you're wrong. That is not the right answer. It will almost always be property B. You say, wait a minute, but I make more money off of this because I have less debt. Yeah, that's cash flow. But I didn't ask you about cash flow. I asked you if you want to know what your interest rate is on the equity that's in B versus A. And I'll tell you right now, and your clients don't know this because no one has told them, you're going to get a higher rate of return. Why? On B. You say, why? I'll tell you why. Because A has more equity. But A can't charge more for rent on the individual units, whether it's a single family or it's a 150 unit apartment building, or if it's a large commercial shopping center. You can't charge more rent because you have more equity. Whereas B, the identical property to A, doesn't charge more rent either, but it has less invested. So the equity in A is not giving you a bigger, it is giving you better cash flow, but it is not giving you a better rate of return. Because just because equity goes up, it doesn't mean your rents go up, because rents are not calculated on equity. They just aren't. Because I have more equity in a building, am I going to charge more rent to the tenants? No. So I'm getting a better rate of return off of B. I might have less cash flow, but I'm getting a better percentage of return. So here's the question. How do you fix that? The answer is all the way on the bottom on the right-hand side, the white background with the green and blue under. Releverage. I cannot tell you how many places I go to and people I see, like the apartment owners associations as an example, and other groups that I speak with. And you know what? You know what they do? There's two ways to releverage. Some of them do it way number one. They'll refinance A, take equity out of A, buy another building. So now they have A, B, and another building. And that building will begin to pay them rents. And their rate of return is now balanced, and their cash flow is a little bit more balanced. So now they've got more doors paying them rent. Because what is ultimately the thing these investors want? More doors, more properties. So all of them can pay them rent. And they can watch the equities go up on all of them. Because when values go up, they go up. It has nothing to do with how much equity you have in the building. So the bottom line is your rate of return will be higher when you have less debt. I'm sorry, when you have more debt. But when you go to retire, that's when it makes sense to pay off your debt. So your cash flow will go up because you're not working anymore. Number two, appreciation. Appreciation, like I just said it, both are going to go up in appreciating markets. Will A go up faster and it's next door to B, identical properties in the same neighborhood next to each other? Is A going to go up faster because it has more equity? No. What determines how the property goes up? The answer is the comps. What other properties like that are selling for. Does that make sense? So even though A has more equity, it's not going to go up any faster in value than B will. Just like you can't charge more rent for property A because it has more equity than B, because B and A are the identical properties, are going to bring in the exact same amount of rent. what they're going to keep from cash flow determines with how much debt they have on it. And ultimately, the best time to make it work hard as much as possible, you want to go the B route. And when you go to retire, then you want to go the A route of having no debt. Lastly, which property is going to give you more tax write-offs so you will pay less to the IRS and less to the California Franchise Tax Board? How do you do that? The answer is they're both identical properties. They're going to be tax-wise, same depreciation schedule for the most part, but the difference of the taxes that you will pay will be because of property B, because property B has more mortgage debt, therefore B will pay less in taxes because they've got that write-off. And it makes total sense to the CPA and to the investor. But they have to see it that way. And no one has told them. Oh, there's a second way of releveraging. It's not just taking a loan out and refinance. You can sell the property for them. You can take that listing and sell the property and help them to releverage into other buildings, maybe on different streets, maybe in a different city, maybe in a different county, maybe in a different state. You're with Coldwell Banker. The last time I checked, Coldwell Banker is all over the country. You can get referral fees by selling the property and referring the client to another CB agent in another state. Does it make sense? So releveraging, whether you're selling and releveraging the equity to bigger buildings that'll give you a better rate of return, just like the other seminar I told you I spoke at in Beverly Hills. That's what he told me. That's what I already knew as an investor and as a 1031 exchange person. That's a big deal. So now that you know what the rate of return is, what happens if you sell the property? You pay taxes. It's very easy. Your taxes are not based on how much equity you have in the building. Nothing to do with that. It's based on the formula that you see on the right, which you are not to practice with your clients because you are not a CPA. You are not an EA. You're not an accountant. Therefore, you're not allowed to do it. If you do and you're wrong, guess what's going to happen to you? You better hope your E&O is paid up because they're going to go after you. They're going to go to court against you if you give them this kind of tax advice. So I'm just going to give you a basic feel of what it looks like. The sales price of the property, whatever you sold it for, minus what you paid for it, the difference is your gain. But it's far more complicated than that because the price that you paid for it is adjusted every year by the CPA. They add in capital improvements that raises the basis. The higher the basis, the lower the capital gain will be. Then they deduct depreciation of what you were supposed to take on the property. And then when you sell the property, they add in closing costs because that raises the basis as well. It's very complicated and it's deeper than what I'm showing you. But just to get a feel for it, a taste for it, the sales price minus the adjusted basis equals the capital gain. Now, we've said this before, I'll say it again. If you're selling your principal residence and you've owned it for at least 2 years, and you've lived in it at least 2 years or 2 of the last 5, the government will give you up to, don't ever say 500,000 if you're married, up to $500,000 of gain off the capital gain. So if my wife and I own our homes for 35 years now, I get 100% of the $500,000. So if my gain is 700, your CPA will take the 7, subtract the 121 principal residence exclusion of up to 500 for a married couple or up to 250 for an individual. That will leave the taxable gain. That's what they'll pay. So for me, my wife and I would pay only $200,000 worth of gain. A single person, because of this, they only get 250. They would get up to $450,000 or a minimum of $450,000 in gain that they would have to pay. So you say, well, how much do they pay? That's the gain, but how much is the actual tax? I'll show you that on the next slide. If it's a second home or vacation home, you get nothing off the 700,000. You pay taxes on 700,000. If it's a business use properties, you get nothing off of it. You get the ability to do a 1031 exchange, so you don't have to pay it and defer it. But you get, unless you do an exchange, you get nothing. You pay 100% taxes on the gain. How much is the tax rate? Here you go. 15 to 20%. The average person is going to be around 15%. Your cap is at 20% to the IRS off your gain that we just showed you. Number two, if your gain is at least $200,000 or more, then Obamacare kicks in, where you have to pay into the healthcare. It's like making healthcare payments, but it's off the sale of your property, your principal residence, your second home, your vacation home, your rental, your business use properties, all of them. All of them, if your gain is over 200, you pay an additional 3.8% to the IRS for the healthcare program. That's in addition to the 15 or 20% you just pay. Number three, you have to pay the state of California. The state of California is going to want between 9.3 to as much as 13.3. Average person is going to be somewhere between 9 and 12%. They pay that to the state. The state takes the money and they waste money they spend. Well, you know what I'm saying. I see homelessness hasn't gotten much better, so apparently it didn't work for that. And by the way, last time I checked, which was recently, California is broke. California is losing money every single year. They're paying too much in pensions. They haven't fixed homelessness. The taxes are higher here. And this is what they charge. Do you know we have the highest tax rate of any state in the country? Did you know the legislature is entertaining the possibility of raising our state tax, which is already the highest in the country, to a cap? What we've been hearing is between 16.3 to 18.3% for the state. That's a huge increase. But that'll remains to be seen what they're going to do. Why is the state tax going to have to go up? Because people keep leaving the state who have money. They're not paying their taxes to the state because they're leaving the state. They're taking their properties with them, their rental properties, just like the guy I just told you about. And they're going to other places where the laws are more balanced, where the tax rates are less, where they don't give more rights to the tenants than they do for the landlord. You have to have balance, people. It's got to be balanced, or the government topples over. And that's what's happening in the state. And then if it's a rental property, you not only pay the 15 to 20% to the IRS, the 3.8 for the medical health care program, the 9 to 13 to the state of California, but then you've been allowed to depreciate the property if it's a rental or business use. So the government says, well, we gave you the depreciation. Now we're going to tax you a little bit on the depreciation we gave you. And that will cost you 25% of all the allowable depreciation. So if you were able to deduct or depreciate, let's say $400,000, what's 25% of 400,000? It's 100. So you pay an additional 100,000 in taxes over the long-term capital gain, over the Medicare cap, over the California state tax. And if you didn't take the depreciation when you were allowed to take it, but you took the option not to take it, guess what? You still have to pay the 25% tax because it was an allowable tax of which the government will come back and charge you the 25% recapture rate of tax, even if you didn't take it. Remember, you cannot take it on your primary residence, your second home, or your vacation home. Only business use or rental property. Make sense? That's what you pay when you let your equity go up and you're getting the income off your buildings. You're going to pay taxes. You're also going to pay ordinary income taxes on the rent you collect. And you'll pay that each year to the federal government. So what's a 1031 exchange if you want to releverage? A 1031 exchange allows you to sell the property. You have to bring in a company like ours that's going to set up the exchange there in escrow before escrow closes. But it lets you to defer those taxes I just showed you. So you don't have to pay this to sell. So if you're going to sell and buy bigger, better properties with more doors in other neighborhoods, in other cities, in other states, because you can buy anywhere in the United States, it gives you the opportunity that we just discussed about watching your income grow because now you have more doors to collect them in. Number two, you have more properties that are going to go up in value as opposed to putting all the equity in property A. So now they'll all go up. Number three, you get to write off every one of those buildings. That's why people do 1031 exchanges. They don't have to pay the tax to go into better buildings. Doesn't that make sense? It makes total sense. And when you die, if it's in a trust, your heirs get a stepped up basis. So remember, let me go back to this one right here. Remember to calculate the taxes, the sales price minus the adjusted basis. Well, guess what happens to the basis when you die? Whatever the fair market value is at that time, that will be calculated by the CPA. So your basis will step up to the fair market value. There's no gain in the property anymore. Your heirs pay zero in these areas, as long as they qualify for it. And to qualify for it, they need to talk to a CPA, or better yet, an estate planning attorney. So when they pass, it goes to their spouse, it goes to their kids, it goes to whoever they want to leave their properties to and all their money to at a step up basis. What a country this is that allows you to defer tax so you can make more money, that you can stimulate the economy because you're selling and buying, and because when you die, you get a stepped up basis. Amazing, just amazing. So which properties qualify for the 1031 exchange? Oh, by the way, are there any questions that I can answer? Because let's see. It already says that, put your questions in the chat room. I'm just looking at that now. If you want to, I'm happy to answer your questions. Remember, only investment real estate qualifies for this. How do you, and that's on the left side. But how do you define investment real estate? Well, there's three definitions as far as the IRS is concerned. Number one, property you rent out for income for 2 years or more. See on the left side where it says 2+ years or longer. So if you've been renting it out for 2 years or more, you get to do a 1031 exchange on it. Did I say commercial? Did I say residential? I didn't, because it applies to all of them. Commercial, residential, whatever. Yes, sir, Ruben.
So would this include your primary residence?
No.
If you built a couple ADUs and rented them out,
then you would be able to exchange the ADU portion because they are rented out, but you will get the principal residence exclusion on the portion that you lived in. And your CPA will tell you what those percentages are.
Got it. So it'd be split up, right?
Yeah. You'll see in a slide that I'm going to show you how that works. But you have to know what the percentage is, and your CPA already knows because they're depreciating the ADU part and not your principal residence part. The government already knows. Remember, this applies to commercial, residential, industrial, if you're renting them out. Number two, what if you're not renting them out, but you run your business out of it? Like you have a warehouse, or you have an office space, or a car wash, or a gas station, or a self-storage facility, and it's used for your business. If it's not rented, you use it for your business, then it qualifies for a 1031 exchange because it's held for business use. So if you use a little room out of your home, that isn't what they're talking about. They're actually talking about operating a business out of that property. Okay. Number three, if it's vacant land, it qualifies as investment real estate. Vacant residential, vacant commercial, M zone, It doesn't matter what the zoning is or the use code is. If it's vacant land and you're holding it just to appreciate, it qualifies as a 1031 exchange. And these are the three definitions of what the federal government calls investment property. Let me ask you a question. How many people out there own any one of these three or multiples of these three? The answer is a lot. Their gain is going up. Their equities have been going up for the last 10, 15, 20, 25 years. They haven't heard the message that the government will let you exchange and go into better properties that will produce more income, appreciation, and cash flow to reduce the amount of taxes they will pay on properties. This is what they do. And these are the property owners that will do it. The question is, will you be the one who begins talking with them, begins the dialogue? And remember, we don't leave you by yourself. We'll help you with it. If your client has questions, have them call me or my staff and we will answer those. We're not going to give you tax answers. We're not going to give you calculations, for tax rates. And we're not going to give you legal advice. But we are going to talk about how your client can make more money by doing this 1031 exchange from the sale of investment real estate to the purchase of other investment real estate. It could be a like-kind exchange. But what does that mean, like-kind? Let's go back. If I'm selling a condo that I'm renting out in Alhambra the last 2+ years, but I don't want a condo, I want a commercial building. Is that like-kind? The answer is yes. How? Well, if it's a commercial building, am I going to rent it out? Number one here. Or number two, can I run my business out of it? The answer, yeah, either one. Then it qualifies as a 1031 exchange because it's like-kind. It's got what you sell has to be one of these properties, one of these three. And what you're going to purchase is going to be any one of these three. So if you want to sell a commercial building and buy a single family residence rental, can't be a primary residence or second home or vacation home, but it has to be a rental, then that would qualify because you're selling a commercial building, number two, or number one. And you're going to exchange into a residential, single family, multiple units, whatever. You can even buy vacant land with it. Or you can sell vacant land and buy any one of those other two buildings. Does that make sense? All of that qualifies only as like-kind anywhere in the country. So you can leave California. And next time we get together, we're going to talk about some of the things that happens when you do leave California and what are some of the options. So the bottom line is you can purchase these properties. Now, Ruben, this is what you were talking about. Which properties don't qualify for a 1031 exchange? Not eligible, do not qualify. Number one, your primary residence never does. So if you have, like Ruben was just talking about, a single family with a couple of ADUs on the back, you could only exchange the ADU part of the sale. And that's where the CPA will tell you what's that percentage that we set up as a 1031 exchange on behalf of the ADUs. Or if it's a 4-unit building, as an example, your client lives in one of the units, they rent out the other 3, they still get the primary residence, the 250 or 500 up to on the sale of the portion that's their primary residence. But on the other 3 units, they get to do a 1031 tax deferred exchange. Your second home does never qualify either to buy or to sell in an exchange. Your vacation home, no way. A business, no. Because remember, if you have a building, let's say you have a restaurant, for example, and you own the building and you own the business. You own the equipment, you own the goodwill, you own the inventory. You can't exchange any of that, but you can exchange the building where the business was used, just like we just spoke of. Flipping or developing, for the most part, no. If people want to buy property, build a bunch of condos or single families or commercial buildings, whatever, and then sell it, they can't do a 1031 exchange. Did they ever rent them? No. For 2 years? No. Did they put their business and run a business inside of it? No. They just built them and now they're selling. So for the most part, those will not qualify for the 1031 exchanges. How about the mansion tax? Those of you who work in the city of LA, there's that new ULA mansion tax. They just jacked up the transfer tax, which is, by the way, going to go to court. There's too many people who are going to be suing the city of Los Angeles for even putting this on the ballot. It's just not lawful. And what happens is, does a 1031 exchange, people ask me, does that defer the payment of the ULA tax? It does not. It does not, unfortunately. Okay, remember, you have to hire an accommodator. If you don't hire the accommodator, and I get like 2 calls a week, 3 calls a week, people want to sell and do a 1031 exchange, but they forgot to put us in the contract. If there's no accommodator in escrow that sets up the 1031 exchange, you have forfeited. The minute that the sale closes, it's over. You have to pay the taxes. And not enough agents ask the questions. Are you going to do a 1031 exchange on the sale of your rental or your business use property? If so, look at the red on the bottom. The exchange must be set up by a company like ours at escrow for them before any escrow closes. It's too late after escrow closes. You can't do it. People call me and ask me that all the time. It's unfortunate. It's tax fraud. You can't do it. Remember to use your CAR forms when you sell the property, because your CAR form, like the seller SXA, your seller's intent to exchange, does 2 things. It brings us into the contract so you don't forget about setting us up while it's in escrow. And number 2, you can put in number 4, item 4 in here, where it says failure to exchange. You can put in language, contingency language, that'll allow you to extend the sale beyond the projected agreed to close of escrow because you're in an exchange. And remember, the timing doesn't begin until you close. The purpose for utilizing number 4 off this SXA form is to extend escrow if your client hasn't found a replacement property yet. This is really important. And then when you go to buy your purchase property, you use your BXA, your buyer's intent to exchange zip form. Next time when we get together, we're going to talk a lot about delay, reverse exchange, hybrids exchange, build to suit exchanges. You know, can I build improvements on the property I'm going to buy? You know, can I close a purchase and then a sale? We'll talk more about that next time when we get into the future. But for today, I want to touch on the delayed exchange because this is the most important exchange that there is out there. I take that back. It's not the most important. It's the one that you utilize the most. A delayed exchange says, I'm going to close the sale first through the accommodator and then close the purchase. So the question is, what are the rules? Well, the first rule, the government says, at the time of closing, assuming that we set up the property in escrow as a 1031 exchange, the first thing is you have in red on the right-hand side, 180 days to close what you're going to exchange into. The government doesn't care when you open escrow on your new purchase. You can open up your purchase escrow before you even close your sale. You can open up your purchase escrow 30 days before the 180 days are there. So 150 days into it. They never tell you when to open escrow. They just say when you close, you have up to 180 days to close your purchase. That is not business days. It's calendar days. And if the 180th day lands on a weekend, when the county recorder is closed, escrow is closed, the title companies are closed, or on a holiday weekend, on a holiday, you do not get to the next business day. You close on that day, and if the county recorder is closed, and the title company is closed, and the escrow is closed, and the accommodator is closed, you close it before that. Never beyond 180 days. You do not get an extension unless there's a disaster and the IRS sends out a decree like last year because of all the rains and the damage that the rains caused, because we got so much rain, that they enacted extension, but so far, nothing here in California. Number two, not only do you have to close your purchase, what you're going to exchange into, again, doesn't matter which state, but you have up to 180 days to close the purchase. The government then says you only have the first 45 days of the 180 days as it begins to name the address or identify the properties you have interest in acquiring. That's it, 45 days. That's why you need that extension language on that zip form I just showed you on the SXA. That's a contingency that you can release once you get into a purchase escrow. And you can narrow it down. I'll take only 30 days, or I'll take an extra 45 days of an extension, or I can take 60 days or whatever you want. But you negotiate the terms so the closing doesn't happen for an additional period of time, which gives your client what? More time to find a replacement property, because it pushes the 180 days down the road. It pushes the closing and the 45 days as well. So you only have 45 days to name, look in the green, up to 3 properties. Up to 3 properties. You can buy any kind of property. You can buy, again, it's like that like-kind thing we were just talking about. Can I buy agricultural land? Yes. Can I buy vacant land? Yes. Can I buy single-family rental that I'm going to rent? Yes. Can I buy a building that I'm going to utilize in a business? Yes. Zoning, none of that make any difference. What matters is how you use the property. And you only have the first 45 days to name up to 3 properties. So the number one question people ask me, can I get an extension in 45 days? The answer is no. The closest you can get to an extension, when there is no extension, is that contingency information I just gave you a minute ago in your SXA form. Can I change the identified properties? Yes. How often? Well, you can change it as many times as you want to, but the government says you cannot change the identification form after day 45. Please, it's tax fraud. You can't do that. I can't do that. Your client is not allowed to do that. Everybody goes to jail, or everybody's going to get fined, probably lose their licenses. It is not worth it. This is very important. Next time we get together, I'll show you there's an alternative way to identify in the 45 days, but we'll do that next time. Can I do this backwards? Close the purchase first and then a sale? Yes. I didn't say open the escrow that you're going to buy first. I said, can you close the purchase first? Because what happens if opportunity knocks on your door and you find an incredible property? And if you don't hurry up and buy it and close the escrow, you're going to lose it to another buyer. Can I close the purchase first? Yes, it's called a reverse exchange. We're going to spend more time on that next time, and we're going to go into more details on these reverse exchanges. But I want you to know that the government will let you close the purchase first only through an accommodator. You just can't buy it and then later on sell and say, I'm going to do a 1031 exchange in the property I already bought, because the government won't let you do that. Number 2, you're going to have to either have cash or cash and financing to acquire that building if you're going to close a purchase first. Where's the money going to come from? The sale? That's good, but you're going to close a purchase first. So that money's not going to come from that sale. So you can get a bridge loan, a swing loan, a line of credit, hard money. The seller can even carry back for you for just a few months until you close your sale. And your sale cannot close any later than 180 days after the purchase is closed. Plus, we have to set up a holding corporation, but we'll get into more of that next time. Very important. You got to know that in this market. Why are reverse exchanges so important in this market? I'll tell you why. Because there's not a lot of inventory. And when there's not a lot of inventory and you want to make sure you find what you need to buy, the reverse exchange can certainly help you with it. Okay, we'll talk about this next time. We'll talk about this next time. I want to talk about this today. Remember, when you sell and buy, you are allowed to pay for out of the proceeds of your sale commissions. So if I'm selling a property, one of you are listing it, and I have to pay you 6% or whatever, that could come out of the proceeds of the sale. I don't have to take that out of my pocket. It comes out of the pocket of the sale of my relinquished property. The escrow fees have to be paid for. I have to bring in a title company to pay for the title insurance. I have to pay transfer taxes. If it's the city of LA, they charge a transfer tax. If they're a city of just different cities, they charge transfer taxes. Not all of them do, but for sure the county all do. That's $1.10 per thousand. That can be paid for out of the proceeds of the sale. The recording fees may be. The 1031 exchange fees I have to pay to do my 1031 exchange. Or if the buyer asks me to fix something or to credit them, I can pay for those things because I have a contractual agreement that I agreed to do so. And those can be paid for out of the proceeds. That's what difference is, non-recurring versus recurring. Non-recurring are all the things I just showed you right here. Those can be paid for out of the proceeds of the sale. But the recurring cannot, the one in red. What is that? Property taxes, those are recurring. Insurance, those are recurring. What about maintenance? Those are recurring. None of those can be paid for out of the proceeds of the sale unless there's a contractual condition to do so. Okay? So here's a good example. I bought it for $300,000. I'm selling it for $1 million. I have $70,000 in non-recurring closing costs. So now my new minimum purchase price is going to be $930,000. You see that on line 3, and you see that on line 6. Why? Because I have no debt. If I have no mortgage debt that needs to be paid off, we will hold the $930 and put it into the purchase, and the minimum purchase price they need to buy their new building for, or buildings if they want to buy multiple of them, because the government will let them do that, is $930,000. But if there's mortgage on the property that I owe, those have to be paid off by the title company. The first, the second, the HELOC, the line of credit, the hard money, whatever's mortgage debt is putting it, not liens, that's a different story. Mortgage debt that is put against the properties, those will be paid off. But if I have $400,000 on number 4 of mortgage debt, then I'm not going to have $930 left over. I'm only going to have $530 left over, number 5. So I still have to buy for $930. So what is the government saying? How do I get back to $930? Here's the answer. You see number 4? You have to reborrow it, the $400,000 again, when you go to your new purchase, because your new minimum to purchase for is $930,000 in this example. Make sense? Can you keep extra money when you're exchanging, like do improvements to the new property? We'll talk about that next time. But if you're not going to do a build-to-suit exchange, the answer is no. You can't just save $50,000 and say, well, we're going to put that as soon as we close escrow, and when we take possession of the property, we're going to put the $50,000 in, we're going to paint, we're going to put in carpet, we're going to put in new floors, we're going to do some improvements. The answer is no, because it didn't go into the what? Purchase. So the only way you can do that is a build-to-suit exchange, but we can talk about that next time. How about preparing my property for sale? Can I deduct that? No, because that's maintenance. Next, can I keep any cash to pay off my bills or go on a vacation? No. How about if when I buy my replacement property, I buy up over, but not all of it is going to go into the purchase. Some of it will be left over and it'll come back to me because I'll overborrow. That's taxable. You can't do that. All of these are no's. You can't do that. When you go to borrow your new replacement mortgage, you can do it several different ways. Number 1, get a new mortgage. Talk to a lender. Number 2, if you have $400,000 of debt that's being paid off and you can't qualify or you don't want to put on a loan, The government will let you take $400,000 out of your bank account or wherever you put your money and put it in the new cash of 400 to go with your, right here, your 530,000. So instead of getting another loan, you can now put 400,000 of your own cash to go with the 530,000 that's coming out of your 1031 exchange, and that puts you back to 930,000. So you can put in new cash if you want to reduce or eliminate a replacement loan. The seller can carry back for you. You could assume the seller's loan, or any combination of the above will work. We'll even put the EMD money, as the client gives us the request, into the purchase of the new property, so they don't have to take it out of pocket, unless they haven't closed their sale. Then they will have to, and they can get that reimbursed by escrow at the closing of the acquisition. Let's pass them. Okay, some of these questions I want to go over real quick, because we don't have a lot more time left over. Can I go into a REIT or a DST? And I will try to cover most of these things next time, but the answer is no on a REIT, yes on a DST. A DST is a Delaware statutory trust. We will spend more time on this next time, okay? A REIT you can't, a Delaware statutory trust you can. A Delaware statutory trust is basically a shopping center or a very, very large apartment building, or it could be a commercial building where you buy with other people, so you only own a part of it. It's a tenant in common relationship. The government will let you do that. This helps a lot of people, especially as they're older, especially if they're in their 70s and 80s and 90s, they want to go to something that they don't have to manage anymore. We'll talk about that and TroubleNet next time. Can I exchange into a building? If I have a single family and I have room for an ADU, can I do a 1031 exchange on what I'm selling and build an ADU in the back of my home or another rental property I have? The answer is no. It's highly, highly discouraged, because you have to buy new property to do a 1031 exchange. And you're not buying a new property. You're either building on vacant land or another property you already own. You're not buying property. An exchange is the sale of property and the purchase of property. You're not buying any property. Could I pay off loans of other properties I own? No. It all has to go into the purchase of the new property. Very, very important. What about an LLC? What about a corporation? Because not everybody you're going to work with has got just their names on title. There's all kinds of partnerships, corporations, trusts, LLCs, limited partnerships. There's individuals. There are tenants in common. Remember, and I'm going to spend a lot more time on this next time. This is a very important page. When you sell the property, you have to buy the property in the same tax ID number. See, the government says that it's not the name as much as it is the social security number or the EIN or the TIN number of the property you're selling. That same taxpayer, that same tax number has to be bought by the person. Remember, to the government, you're not a name, you're a number. You're either a TIN, an EIN, or you're a social security number. And whichever name or number that is associated to that name, that number must buy also the replacement property in a 1031 exchange. Could I move into the property? No, you can't buy it with the intent to move in. But after a few years, there might be a possibility if something changes. Seeing green, unexpected, unforeseen, something unplanned. Example, what happens if your client has a medical issue and has to convert an exchange property into a personal residence? That's possible. What if their spouse dies? Or what if they get a divorce and they need to move into that building? Is that possible? Perhaps. It depends on the CPA. The CPA has to make that determination. Please, not you. Because if you do that, you've just given them legal and tax advice. And if they get caught and the government doesn't agree with them, they're going to sue you because you told them it was okay to convert a 1031 exchange property you acquired into a personal residence. What if they lose all their money? They have a financial hardship. They have to move into their rental property because they're going to lose their home. Is that possible? Maybe. Any of these are possible after, please listen to this, after a few years of holding it as an investment. But the only way to find out is to talk to their CPA, not you, certainly not me. This is very important, and this will keep you out of trouble. We'll talk next time about the Housing and Economic Recovery Act. Did you know every time the government gives you like a stimulus package or an Economic Recovery Act, do you know that all that means is we're going to tax you even more? That's pretty much what it means. And you'll see next time when we get into it, what happens when you convert a rental or a second home into a principal residence, and will you still get the 500 or the 250? You'll see next time when we get together. Could I combine a sale of a property with both the principal residence exclusion and the 1031 exchange? Believe it or not, there is that possibility. I'm going to talk about this next time and how you can start farming people who've owned their properties, their principal residence now, for 30 years, for 20 years, or maybe more than that, who want to convert it into a rental and then do a 1031 exchange. I'll show you how they can get both, but that'll be next time. Also, what about if the buyer asks your seller to carry back? What happens in those situations? Will the government allow that to happen? In most cases, I'll tell you they're not, but there are some that they will. We'll talk about that next time. When do I get my money back if my exchange fails? And when is the accommodator going to give me back my money? This is really important because a lot of people get mad because they don't get their money immediately because the government says, no, you're not going to, because you entered into an exchange. There are waiting periods. I'll get into that next time. Lastly, I just want to talk about the investor marketing letters I have. I have 20 letters that I've already told you at the beginning. I gave you my email address. If you want these answers to these questions where you can start sending this out to your prospects or to clients you've already worked with who own rental properties. How do I get more cash flow? I've got a couple of pieces on that. How do I raise more appreciation? Here's the answer. You already know that. You diversify the equity that's in your building and you get multiple buildings. So all of them will go up to create a greater appreciation. Is depreciation still my friend? The answer is no, because depreciation stays flat based on the capital improvement portion of your purchase. But as equities go up and rents go up, you don't get more depreciation unless you do capital improvement to the building, which means you're paying more in taxes off the rent you collect. This is so important, and you need to be able to give that information to a client. How do I reduce the stress and time managing my properties? Go into a triple net property where you don't have to manage it anymore. Maybe you're gonna buy a property where your tenant is Chick-fil-A, Starbucks, CVS, Trader Joe's, 99, whatever it happens to be. Those are triple net properties. They pay for the property taxes, not your client. They pay for the insurance on the building, not your client. They pay for the maintenance. The tenant pays for the maintenance on the building, not your client. Or they go into a DST where they co-own. They don't have to be involved in that kind of management anymore. So if they want to get out of residential units and into something where they can live their lives, not pay taxes, still have the income coming in, and when they die, their heirs get a stepped up basis, this is an incredible opportunity for them. What about, how do I diversify myself by not putting all my equity in one property? Should something happen with that property? How about, am I holding title in the right way? We're going to talk about that next time. You know, how do I minimize or defer the tax burden for myself and my heirs? We're going to talk about that next time. If you want these letters, there's my email address in blue on the bottom, philantoine@gmail.com. That's my phone number. If you'd like, give me a day and I'll send those to you. Just send me an email. Give me a day to get them out, and I'll be happy to do that. Well, Ruben, we did it. We did about an hour and a half. And next time when we come, and I know we covered a lot of information, but next time we're going to blow your mind. We're going to get into a lot heavier duty information that you're going to learn so much more. And you'll probably have more questions too. But just to end it again, it's all about you getting in front of new clients that you've never met before, or clients who own rental properties who you know that you can start approaching them about selling, not paying the tax, doing a 1031 exchange, and making more money. That's how you make more in 2024.
Phil?
Thank you, Phil. Thank you for coming to talk to us again. I know that your seminar is always very informational and educational. So we enjoy it very much.
Thank you,
Looking forward to
Peter.
the next one.
Thank you. I'm honored that you would say that. I respect you so much, and thank you for that. And Ruben, you as well, and your whole team at Coldwell Banker George Realty. I'm looking forward to next February the 28th at 10 a.m. We're going to spend another hour and a half, but this time we're going to go into the advanced questions and how do you answer those questions.
That's great.
Thanks, Phil. You know, I love your enthusiasm in this. You know, you make the learning so much more funner and stuff because of your enthusiasm. So it's not just like, I mean, I don't want to say a boring learning session, but there are those, but this is not the case. I do want to tell our agents that this is an abundance of information, and I don't think Phil intended on everybody absorbing everything and knowing everything that you need to know on 1031 exchanges just by this training or this class. But just like you would refer legal questions to an attorney, I think, Phil, it's safe to say that if you have any clients that are interested in a 1031 exchange, or if you get success from the letters that hopefully you ask Phil for, that they can refer them to you, right, Phil?
Absolutely. In fact, right now I'm typing into the chat box my email address and my phone number. But if you want the letters, just send me the email, because I'm going to ask you to send me the email anyway, if that's what you really want, is the letters.
Okay. And if you miss his email for whatever reason, just email me and I'll get it to you. I have his email.
Good. Good. I just put it in the chat again. Congratulations. It's 2024, but there's more in 24 if you just get in front of new people. It's that simple and it's that complicated all at the same time.
Yeah, and I also want to remind everybody that this session has been recorded and is available in the website.
Not yet.
Not yet?
Well, obviously I have to download it, upload it, but it'll be available, let's say by the end of the day.
Yeah. That's what I mean. I mean, eventually it'll be available. I don't think right now, you know?
No, yeah. If they try to search for it right now, it's not going to happen.
Oh, Ruben, could you send me a copy of the link so I can have it for my personal use to look at?
Of course. Once it's up,
Maybe I'll learn something. Who knows?
and you know what? By viewing it, well, obviously you can critique yourself, but I don't think you're going to find anything to critique. But you'll see what I'm talking about as far as your enthusiasm. It shows that you enjoy doing what you're doing and helping people with their 1031 exchanges. So
Thank you.
I applaud that and I thank you.
Thank you. One more thing I want to give you as a management, Peter, Ruben, maybe this next time, because it's going to be more in the commercial end and more of the deeper end because it's advanced, you might utilize that as a recruiting tool with other agents that maybe you want to talk with and see if they'd like to be a part of your company.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll
Thank you.
plan on it.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day, and it'll happen
Thank you.
if you plant the seed.
If not, you get weeds, right?
That's right. That's the truth, and my house will prove it.
All right, Phil. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Have a good day, everybody.